Thank you to my favorite butter, Danish Creamery, for sponsoring this episode. I've teamed up with them to bring you a series of butter-forward holiday recipes this season. Extra churned with 85% butterfat for a richer taste and texture, Danish Creamery European-style butter is the secret ingredient to leveling up almost any dish. The butter is an innovative blend of Danish heritage and American innovation, and the product speaks for itself. For more info on Danish Creamery, head to the link in the description.
I'm spilling everywhere, and I'm behind on the lobster. I have a question. His cousin, Michelle's friend, Steven, is he gay?
Is who gay? Ma, why are you doing the seven fishes thing? Nobody ever eats this
No. Steven, is he gay? I mean, he seems kind of gay. You know, he's arty, and I mean, I love him and everything, but he's gay, I think. And it's tradition.
It's tradition that he's gay?
No. The seven fishes. What the do you think I've been doing this morning for?
Okay, Ma, hey, how can I help?
You can fix the forks.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week we're taking a look at the Feast of the Seven Fishes from the Bear, one of the most intense and upsetting episodes of television ever devised. Now this is obviously a rather complicated feast, so I'm going to go dish by dish, starting with the whole roasted branzino, which I'm going to pat dry inside and out, lightly oil inside and out, and heavily season with salt and pepper inside and out. This might be the first dish that I'm going over, but ironically it'd be the last one that you'd want to make, as these fish are simply being stuffed with lemons and herbs, just a little bit of fresh rosemary, thyme, and parsley, and a couple cloves of garlic roughly chopped, all of which is simply going to scent the meat as the fish roasts. I'm also going to sprinkle the skin with a little bit of pepperoncino. I'm also going to very lightly score the fish skin, which should help it roast up crispier. Last but not least, I'm going to scatter some capers around the fish, which should roast up into some crispy little pops of flavor. This guy's headed into a 425°F oven for about 20 minutes, until the skin is brown and the thickest part of the meat registers 145°F. Plate up on a nice comfy bed of lemons, and scatter the crispy capers over top. Next up, another ironically a la minute dish, king crab legs, which in New York City are available almost exclusively frozen. So after letting them thaw in the fridge overnight, I'm condensing them to fit in a large pot with an inch of boiling water in the bottom. I've also got some lemon slices, peppercorns, and bay leaves swimming around in there, and we're going to cover them up and steam them for about 5 minutes, or until they too register 145 degrees at the thickest point. We're going to serve those with some lemons and drawn butter, which we'll go over later. So that's the very simplest of dishes out of the way. So now we're going to go back in time and do some more complicated stuff, starting with oysters Rockefeller. In the jar of a food processor, I'm combining the whites of 8 scallions, quarter of an onion roughly chopped, 2 cloves of garlic, and 1 rib of celery roughly chopped. Now we're going to use the food processor to basically finely chop all these ingredients. Once you got yourself a nice chunky paste, we're going to take this over to the stovetop, where we're going to saute it in a healthy drizzle of olive oil, about 2 to 5 minutes or until softened and translucent. This is just going to soften some of the harsher flavors that are going into the herb butter that goes on the oysters Rockefeller. We're also going to deglaze the pan with a couple tablespoons of Pernod, a French anise flavored liqueur, pretty much absinthe without the wormwood and with less alcohol. Cook this for 1 to 2 minutes or until the alcohol smell dissipates. Then we're throwing it back in the food processor with the ingredients whose flavors we want to keep fresh: the reserved greens of our 8 scallions, a big old fistful of parsley roughly chopped, stems included, and a half cup of frozen and thawed spinach. Process this stuff together a few times until roughly combined. Then we're going to add 1 stick or 8 tablespoons of unsalted butter. We're kind of all over the map here in terms of traditionality, but the original recipe for oysters Rockefeller was kept a secret by its creator, and he's dead, so whatever. Pulse this stuff into a rough paste and refrigerate until you're ready to rock a feller. Give it a taste and realize that you didn't add salt and pepper, so be sure to do that. Next up, the oysters themselves, which must be shucked. A difficult and dangerous process for which I have no existing knowledge. So I'm basically going to stab at these shells until they open up, and advise you to seek oyster shucking instruction elsewhere, and if you've never done it, to avoid this annoying process entirely. Once you've managed to open a half dozen oysters, we're wedging them into a bed of rock salt to keep them upright, generously topping with our herby oniony butter, and top that with some homemade Italian seasoned breadcrumbs, which once again we'll go over later. Once you're finished with this, you're going to realize that you're using too big a tray, especially now that counter space is rapidly disappearing, so transfer the whole arrangement to a quarter sheet and set these guys under a medium broiler for 3 to 5 minutes until the butter mixture is softened and the breadcrumbs are golden brown. Plate up on some more rock salt and get ready to go back in time again, this time to make insalata di polpo, or octopus salad. I've got 1 whole, very dead and deep-beaked octopus, which I'm going to drop into a large pot of simmering water, along with both the juice and spent carcass of 1 lemon, 3 cloves of peeled and lightly crushed garlic, 1 heaping tablespoon of black peppercorns, and a heaping handful of parsley, all of which is going to gently perfume the octopus as it cooks for 45 minutes to 1 hour. You want to keep the temperature of the water at a very gentle poach, from 180 to 190°F, so the octopus doesn't become tough or rubbery. Once it's tender enough to be easily pierced with a paring knife, we're going to gently transfer it to a large ice bath, taking extra care not to drop it. You know, like that. Smooth, Andy. Leave it in the bath until fully chilled, about 30 minutes. Now, insalata de polpo is about as much potato as it is octopus. So I got 1 pound of halved baby Yukon Golds that I've soaked for an hour, rinsed, and placed in some cold, heavily salted water, which we're going to bring up to a simmer and cook until completely tender. Speaking of which, I'm cutting our chilled and extremely tender octopus into bite-sized pieces. Once the potatoes are cooked and completely cooled, we're combining them with the octopus and preparing a bright and herbaceous dressing. I got a half cup of freshly squeezed lemon juice, the zest of 2 lemons, and I'm combining that with 1/3 of a cup of extra virgin olive oil, a half cup of chopped fresh parsley, 1 clove of crushed garlic, and a few generous pinches of kosher salt and twists of freshly ground black pepper. Then go ahead and beat this up with a small fork until it emulsifies into a dressing. Taste for seasoning, and if it's too thin, you can add more olive oil. Drizzle that over the octopus and potatoes, toss together until evenly coated. Give it a taste to make sure that everybody's properly seasoned, and adjust as necessary when you inevitably need more salt, pepper, and olive oil. Then we're going to cover and refrigerate this for 1 to 4 hours to let things marinate, before serving over a bed of arugula to lend a nice peppery bite. Next up, Italian stuffed artichokes, a dish that unfortunately looks a lot better than it tastes. We're starting by snipping off the tip of each leaf, mostly as a courtesy to our diners so that they don't spike their fingers. Then we're going to chop off the stem all the way up to the base so that the artichokes stand upright, and then saw off the top 1.5 inches, exposing the beautiful Fibonacci sequence within. Now these guys are going to get steamed to completion before being roasted. Over about 1 inch of water combined with 1/2 cup each of white wine and lemon juice, plop in a steamer basket, populate with artichokes, cover and steam until completely tender, about 30 minutes depending on the size of your chokes. A paring knife should slip into its bottom without resistance. Now at this point these guys can be cooled completely, covered and fridged overnight until ready to roast. Next up, those Italian breadcrumbs I promised we'd come back to. I've got about 2 cups of already Italian breadcrumbs that I'm going to further italicize. Adding a 1/2 cup of chopped fresh parsley, a 1/2 cup each Parmesan and Romano cheese, the zest of 1 lemon, and 2 crushed cloves of garlic. Go ahead and toss those all together for the tastiest bread that ever did crumb. This stuff is going to go real nice with our artichokes, oysters, and most any seafood application. Now we're going to generously brush the artichokes with butter, both because it will of course taste delicious and it will help our breadcrumbs adhere to the surface. So we're going to sprinkle that stuff on there generously, making sure to pull open the leaves of the artichokes so that the breadcrumbs get down inside. And go really crazy here. You want to get the breadcrumbs as deep down into the artichoke as possible so that when you eat the leaves, you don't have to put the whole thing in your mouth to get some breadcrumbs. Now we're going to roast these guys at 425 degrees Fahrenheit until they are browned and melty and look really, really good. Like I said, I'm not super crazy about this one. The breadcrumbs are delicious, but they just get soggy and there's not that many of them. But like most seafood, they are an excuse to eat butter like it's salsa, specifically clarified or drawn butter, which we're going to make about 2 pounds of, so we're going to need a bigger pot. Simply melt and cook the butter over medium heat until the foaming subsides and the milk solids begin to separate. You can start skimming off the foam and skimming the solids as you see them, but either way, before the solids begin to brown, we're going to strain this stuff through a few layers of cheesecloth or a couple paper towels, removing every last piece of particulate and leaving us with some fittingly named clarified butter. You could also just do melted butter, but this is classy. Skim off any remaining foam, allow to cool, cover, and refrigerate until ready to use. And by use, I mean basically drink it, using the medium of crab, artichokes, and lobster. Garnish with parsley because, again, classy. Speaking of which, I've got 2 large lobsters killed off screen that I'm going to drop into a vat of boiling water, once again lightly poaching at around 180 degrees Fahrenheit, gently cooking the meat until it registers 135 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit at its thickest point. Pull them out of the hot tub and send them straight into the ice bath, quickly chilling the meat so that it doesn't overcook, which also means we get to serve these guys cold, which is way easier. And there you go, quote unquote fish number 5 of 7, served with some lemon halves and leave the duty of cracking open and retrieving the meat to your dinner guests. Next up, my favorite part of being Italian at Christmas, some fried calamari, for which I'm going to make a cheater's aioli, basically just a thinner mayonnaise of 2 eggs, 1 whole clove of garlic, a pinch of salt, and a splash of lemon, processed together using an immersion blender in a cup the same size as the blender head. I'm also going to gently process in a couple Calabrian chilies for a little bit of heat and a nice pop of color. Now we're going to pour 1 cup of neutral flavored oil like vegetable or canola down the side of the cup, letting it settle on top and gently pulsing the immersion blender upward, emulsifying together the eggs and oil into a nice creamy mayonnaise that we're going to call aioli. This will just be our filthy, delicious little secret, like a can of body chocolate in the fridge. You can cover and refrigerate this for up to 2 weeks or until ready to use. Next up, the calamari itself. Got about a half pound of fresh squid here that I'm going to very thoroughly pat dry. I'm cutting the upper part of the squid or mantle into the signature rings and keeping the tentacles whole because they're going to fry up into nice little clusters. Next, we're going to marinate these guys in a mixture of 2 cloves of crushed garlic, the zest of 1 lemon, a big old pinch of kosher salt, and a few twists of FGBP. Thoroughly massage until evenly coated and allow to marinate for at least 30 minutes before cooking. Once you're ready to fry, we got a 3-stage breading process. First, very thoroughly coating each piece in flour inside and out, shaking off any excess, tossing in some beaten eggs, shaking off again, and then tossing in a very interesting breading, semolina flour. Something I've never tried before. I'm very excited to see how it goes. We're sending these into a big vat of neutral frying oil at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for about 2 to 3 minutes, shuffling occasionally to make sure they don't stick together, skimming out and draining on a wire rack, then making sure to generously season with kosher salt while it's still hot so the salt sticks. And if you can't tell by my body language, the stuff came out pretty awesome. I'd actually recommend doing a 50-50 mix of semolina and flour or breadcrumbs, but it makes for a nice ultra crunchy crust. Next up, our final quote-unquote fish, which is actually shrimp. I'm making a poaching bath of heavily salted water, a whole lemon squeezed before dunking, 3 bay leaves, and a few cloves of garlic. Drop in the shrimp and once again maintain a gentle poaching temperature of about 180 to 190 degrees Fahrenheit, letting these guys cook for 2 to 4 minutes or until pink, firm, and registering 145 at their thickest point. These are going to make for a shrimp cocktail, so I'm going to chill them in an ice bath for about 15 to 20 minutes or until completely chilled. Next up, we're going to make cocktail sauce for some reason, combining 12 ounces of chili sauce, half a cup of ketchup, 1 tablespoon Worcestershire sauce, 1 tablespoon lemon juice, and 2 to 4 tablespoons of prepared horseradish, depending on how zesty you want things to be. Mix to combine and taste to confirm that it tastes exactly like the stuff you get out of a jar. Spoon this stuff into a coupe or martini glass and arrange the chilled and dried shrimp around the rim. And there you have it, the Feast of the 7 Fishes. A heady combination of meticulously prepared seafood, which if cooked by yourself all in one day could potentially drive you to madness. And of course, we gotta make garlic bread, meatballs, and sauce because, and I quote, nobody eats this shit anyway. We're gonna need high quality butter here, so I got 2 sticks of unsalted Danish creamery, to which I'm going to add both a teaspoon of garlic powder and 4 cloves of crushed garlic, which is going to give us a more complex range of garlic flavor. I'm also going to add a half teaspoon of crushed chili flake, 1 teaspoon of dried oregano, a half cup of freshly chopped parsley, 1 to 2 teaspoons of kosher salt, and some freshly ground black pepper. Massage that together into a compound butter. Now, it kind of looked like Jamie Lee Curtis was just using plain butter, so I'm sorry for the inaccuracy here, but I'm only making 1 meal and I want it to be really good. She was seen spreading the butter by hand onto a round boule, which I'm going to cut in half and trim the top so that it lays flat. And I'm not sure if it's because she's Italian or having a nervous breakdown or both, but we too are going to spread the butter directly onto the bread using our 5-fingered spatula. Don't forget to drink plenty of red wine and get butter all over the glass, which is really visually upsetting for some reason. Go ahead and set these guys on a rim baking sheet, cover with aluminum foil, bake for 15 minutes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, uncover and finish baking until browned. Now we're going to make some pretty basic but delicious Italian meatballs, removing the crust from 4 slices of sandwich bread and tearing it into tiny little pieces. We're going to use this to make a bread paste called a panade that gives meatballs structure and helps them retain moisture. We're topping that with a half to a full cup of buttermilk, 2 tablespoons of heavy cream, 1/4 cup of grated Parmesan or Romano cheese, 1/4 cup of freshly chopped parsley, 1 teaspoon each dried oregano and basil, an optional half teaspoon of crushed red pepper, and 3 cloves of minced garlic. I like adding all this stuff to the panade because it ensures their even distribution throughout the meatballs. Mix this up into a paste, add more buttermilk if necessary to saturate the bread. Now we're going to add 3 lightly beaten eggs. I'm adding a pinch of salt to the eggs because this helps them beat up into a more homogeneous mixture. Adding that to the bowl. I don't know why I didn't mix that into the panade. You can totally do that. I've also got half small, finely diced onion and 2 tablespoons of tomato paste for flavor and color. Looks like I did add that to the panade. My apologies. Last up, we're adding 1 pound each ground beef, ground pork, and ground veal, and thoroughly massaging until no streaks of meat or panade remain. You don't want to overwork this mixture, but you don't want to underwork it either. Then we are, of course, forming this meatball mixture into meatballs, the size of which are entirely up to you. Isn't that fun? Personally, I like 4 to 5 bite balls, which are precisely 125 grams. Space these out evenly on a parchment-lined baking sheet, maybe staggering those lines so they have room to breathe, and roast at 425 degrees Fahrenheit until they register 150 at their thickest point, because they're going to finish cooking in the sauce. I got 2 28-ounce cans of whole San Marzano tomatoes that I'm going to process into a rough texture. I know Mikey said that small cans taste better, but I think it's just because he was hiding cash in them. Now in a large pot, I'm going to heat 2 to 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil over medium-high heat until shimmering. Saute 1 finely chopped whole onion for 2 to 3 minutes minutes or until beginning to turn translucent. Add 6 cloves of thinly sliced garlic, saute for another 30 seconds. Add 2 to 4 tablespoons of tomato paste, saute for another 30 seconds, and add the dual cans of processed tomatoes. I'm also going to add a big handful of fresh basil, which is going to shrivel and look gross, but is going to taste really, really good. We're going to bring this guy up to a bare simmer and let him cook for about 30 minutes, just to let those flavors get to know each other. Meanwhile, our meatballs are headed out of the hot box and straight into the hot tub, where we're going to simmer them together for another 30 minutes. When it's time to serve, we're going to cook 1 pound of pasta until it's about a minute shy of being done, drain, reserving a cup of pasta cooking water, then add the water and about a cup's worth of the sauce together in the pot to finish cooking. Then I'm going to kill the heat and add a few tablespoons of our leftover garlic bread butter, mixing it briskly to emulsify together with the sauce, which is obviously going to taste awesome. Serve that up on a big old platter with plenty of meatballs, with our side of freshly toasted garlic bread, a big old sprinkle of Parmesan cheese, and some fresh basil leaves. Now only one thing is missing. No, not tuna casserole, Sprite, which Carmi makes from scratch. So to make our best at-home approximation, we're combining a half cup each lemon and lime juice, plain old tap water, and of course a half cup of granulated sugar in a small saucepan, which we're going to bring to a simmer and cook for a few minutes until slightly reduced and all the sugars dissolved. This is our lemon lime simple syrup, which I personally think kicks the shit out of actual Sprite. Assembly is as easy as combining it with some seltzer water at the ratio of your choosing. And there you have it, the feast of the 7 fishes. By making it over the course of 2 days and with the help of kitchen producer Rachel, my sanity's been preserved and nobody's driven a car through the wall, which I don't have the After Effects knowledge to fake. So let's see how everything is. The oysters Rockefeller are delicious, herby and buttery. The octopus salad is bright and bracing, and the octopus itself is delightfully tender. Like I said, I don't really understand the point of stuffed artichokes, but I love artichokes too much to care. The lobster is sweet and very tender thanks to its gentle poaching. It and so many other things go wonderfully with the drawn butter. The pasta, I'm embarrassed to say, is my favorite part, especially since it was finished with that awesome herb and garlic butter. The calamari is tender and crunchy, and the cheddar aioli has a nice spicy kick. The branzino is mild and flaky, the crab soft and rich, and the garlic bread is garlic bread, so it's obviously amazing. I can think of few fitter ways to celebrate the holidays with people you love, whose help you can graciously accept, so that dinner ends up on the table on time and nobody starts throwing forks at each other. Thanks again to Danish Creamery for partnering with me to bring our Feast of the 7 Fishes from the bear to life. Danish Creamery butter is where Danish heritage meets American innovation. It's a European-style butter made in America. The 85% butterfat is your secret weapon in the kitchen this holiday season. Have Danish Creamery butter on hand for your cooking and baking projects to add that rich, creamy touch to your next dish. For more info on Danish Creamery, head to the link in the description.